Good evening. Welcome to the March 2nd Combined Budget Finance Committee and Select Board meeting to review budget requests. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the February 23rd meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move they be approved.
To approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? I don't see any. Motion carries. We will have presentations from provider agencies first. I ask that the participating agencies address the committees by introducing themselves and where they live, and then go ahead and with your budget presentation. I really don't know who's there, Sue, so you can pick someone to come up first.
Well, nor do I. I think Alex Aponte has a better idea of who he sent his email to.
I can help with that. Abel Bates is with the Hawthorne House.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start with Abel.
Okay, can you hear me all right? I'm not real familiar with this, so.
You're doing great.
All right, well, if I look, and I've got two monitors here, and only one of them has the camera on it, and that's the small one, so I can't see unless I look at the other monitor. So anyway, Abel Bates, 55 Stark Cove Road in Raymond. I'm here on behalf of the Hawthorne Association. We have been getting $1,000 a year for the last few years, and that has been extremely helpful with my day-to-day operations and keeping our head above water. This year, we have asked for a 1-year additional $1,000. And the reason for that is that maybe some of you recall that a couple of years ago, we had an engineering study done for about $3,500 to address and give us information about repairing the floor structure and the foundation and one of the sides of the buildings. And we had planned in 2019 to begin a big fundraising year, 2020. All of our events that we had planned for 2020 got canceled, but we have still been pretty active as far as raising funds. We've had 2 large mailings. We have a PR fellow who's Dave Carew, lives in Bangor. He's been very helpful. He's got us on the news on Channel 8, 6, and 13, and on the Bangor stations. He's also run some articles in the local and some of the independent newspapers. And so far this year, just doing that, we've managed to raise a little over $38,000, which we feel is terrific considering what's happened this year with the COVID. However, we're still about $37,000 short of what we need. And so any additional funding we can get from the town, I know it's a tough year, we would really appreciate it. And as I said in my letter to the committee, that we planned on this additional $1,000 just for 1 year, just for this particular fundraising to address the problems of the Hawthorne Association. And if you got any questions about what we've been doing and what has to be done, I'd be glad to try to answer them. So,
Thank you, Abel. Are there any questions?
great.
I don't see everyone, so I can't tell if there's any questions. All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck
Thank
with
you.
your fundraiser.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll have some events this summer, and I'd like to see all your people, all your faces there with your wallets. So, all right, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
We have Peggy and Neil Jensen, I believe, from Raymond Waterways, Bob.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peggy Jensen, and I live at 315 Meadow Road. I'm here tonight as the president of Raymond Waterways Protective Association. I did deliver our budget request letter to Don Willard at the end of December and introduced myself to Alex Aponte at Don's urging. So thank you for letting me put my head in, Alex. Our letter pretty well outlines the fantastic success we've had in controlling the variable milfoil that's invasive in Sebago Lake and a couple of tributaries. We have pretty much cleaned it out of the Sebago shores and have cleaned out the mouth of Dingley Brook that comes from Thomas Pond into Sebago Lake. And we are almost cleaned out Jordan River. We have a couple of big challenges there to work on this year, but we are really, really thrilled with the progress that we've made and grateful for your ongoing support. We also do the courtesy boat inspections at all the boat launches to prevent more invasive plants from coming into our waters. So those are the two big money-eating programs that we run, and we really rely on the town's support for that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Peggy. Are there any questions? Marshall?
What's the dollar amount of your request this year, please?
I think we've requested 15,000, which is a slight drop from our request last year.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions.
There are no raised hands.
I'm
Thank
sorry?
you, Peggy.
So we have Robin Mullins from the Sebago Lake Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening. Sue, are you pulling up the presentation? All right, so yes, I am Robin Mullins. I'm the Executive Director of the Sebago Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce, and I actually live in Wyndham. And I'm here tonight to request $350 from you folks. And we have 8 towns that we support, and we find that those towns that invest in our chamber are usually the towns that get the most out of what it is that we do. And right now we have all 8 towns that are invested, which is great. If you want to go to the next slide, Sue. So we're asking for $350, and I want to let you know how that's broken down. The first is a $250 investment in our chamber. And for that, we'd like to think that you're getting a lot more for your money than what it is that we're requesting from you. And you get a town listing on our website. We also do a visitor's guide, which we call a regional guide. And there's specific information on Raymond restaurants, hiking accommodations, beaches, things like that, that can be found on our website and on our regional guide. We also, for any of our towns that are part of our chamber, we also give access for parks and recreation. I had a fantastic conversation with Joe Crawford the other day about how the chamber can partner with the Parks and Recreation Department and do some things in partnership. I do a lot currently with Wyndham Parks and Rec, and I'd really like to be able to do the same thing with Joe. So that was a great conversation, and I appreciate his time. You also, as a member, get discounted access to events. We do morning momentum sessions that are free for our folks. We had one last week, which was managing finances during a crisis, which was done by KeyBank. We also have one coming up on the impact of social media, and we've also done some on stress management. So those are available for any one of our member businesses as well as our towns. We also like to partner with our towns, and this year I was super excited. The town of Wyndham came to me and said, we'd really like for you to partner. The governor is giving money to educate and to provide personal protective equipment to folks, and we'd like for you to partner with us. And I said, I absolutely would like to partner, but I want to include all 8 towns that we do business in. And when I called up Don, he said, we're going to be doing our own grant, but we'd love to participate. So I had the opportunity to work with Don and with Kathy Goslin, and it was a great partnership. we were able to provide stuff to the town for the voting process, signs, hand sanitizer stations, and we also gave lots of stuff to businesses in Raymond as well, free of charge. And it didn't matter if they were a chamber member or not. We were there to support them as much as we possibly could. And we just had our Polar Dip. The Polar Dip used to be run by the Maine Children's Cancer Program, and the chamber has taken that over. We give money to 11 food pantries in the region on an annual basis. And so we've decided to have the Polar Dip be how we raise the bulk of our money for that. And so I want to thank personally Nate, who had some folks come and help us get ready for that. And I'm happy to say that we raised $5,500 for Feed the Need. And we will be giving checks out to those 11 food pantries. We're going to have about $10,000 total with all of the stuff that we've earned this year. So we will be splitting that between those 11 food pantries, and that obviously includes Raymond. So the other $100 that I'm asking for is for a Maine Invites You ad. Maine Invites You is part of the Maine Tourism Association. It's their biggest magazine that they have that promotes tourism in Maine. There's about 300,000 copies of that get distributed. And what you have on the right-hand side of the screen is the ad that I placed. We actually got a $5,000 full-page ad on page 143 of Maine Invites You, if you get a chance to take a look at that. And there were a lot of local businesses that did ads, and then I did one in the middle, kind of touting our entire region, listing all 8 towns that we support. And so that's the first that first page. So if you want to go to the next page too, that would be great. So the picture on the right-hand side is the president of the chamber. His name is Zach Conley. He does live in Raymond, and he was challenged to jump in the Polar Dip a couple of weekends ago, and his first reaction was no. But then we said, if we raised $1,000, will you do it? And so we raised $1,100. So here he is, being a brave soul, jumping into a 34-degree Sebago Lake. During the year of COVID, when a lot of chambers closed their doors or furloughed or canceled all of their events, we tried to keep going as much as possible. We served 25 Raymond businesses. Again, we had an additional 20 that we helped during Keep Sebago Lakes Region Healthy. We did whatever we could to keep our membership. It was a difficult year for a lot of members, and if they said we can't pay, then we gave them free membership. Some of them said, hey, you know what, I'll give you $100. I said, we'll take whatever we can get, because last year was a year when people really needed the chamber. I did weekly newsletters letting people know about loans that were available, letting them know. I actually work with a group of other executive directors from chambers, and we had the opportunity to meet with Susan Collins, Angus King, and Jared Maxwell several times to talk about the different PPP loans and things that were coming. And we actually just met with Susan Collins' team recently, because one of the concerns that we have is that new businesses aren't eligible for the PPP program. And that has been a stickler for quite a few businesses in the region. So I've been heavily involved in that and making sure that we're supporting our businesses as much as possible. And again, supporting businesses, whether they're chamber members or not. We were part of the Workshare program. What that meant was we worked with the unemployment department, and rather than lay anyone off, we reduced the amount of hours that we worked so that we were able to save our chamber $6,500, thereby making sure that we met all budgets, and that was great. We also had our golf open. We usually have that in June. We pushed it off to August. We had our Sebago Spirits event, which we worked very closely with the state and made sure that we followed all COVID and CDC protocols. Again, weekly updates. And one thing that I was super excited about was Camden Library approached me. They did a staycation presentation. And Sue, if you want to go to the final screen. Oh, sorry. So this is the page that I showed. And what I did was I started in Sebago over here on the left-hand side. And I talked about all the fun things there are to do in Sebago. Then I went to Standish, Wyndham, and then Raymond, as you can see is highlighted here. And then, I'm sorry, one more page still. And then I actually did a presentation and I talked about in Raymond, you guys have Fry Island. I talked about the beaches. Specifically, I talked about Tasseltop. The picture with the shovel is from Tasseltop. Talked about all of the wonderful places like Good Life Market, the Beacon Pizza, Fisherman's Catch. We talked about hotels, motels, camping, and things like that as a way to tout the Sebago Lakes region area. And again, I did it by town. And so I just want you to know that the Sebago Lakes Region Chamber is here to support you in any way we can. We do ask for hopefully a nominal amount of money so that we can continue to do the things that we do. But know that we are here. And if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Robin.
There are no raised hands. Oh, there is now.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Sorry, do we pay dues to the chamber?
Yes, that's what this is. Yes.
Thank you.
Rolf, yeah, you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm assuming it's just a typo, but on page 2, we're not really paying for Naples dues. We're paying for our dues, correct?
Oh, yes, you are. Yeah, that was a typo.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you don't have to pay for them. They pay for their own.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Robin.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I just want to make a comment to the board and the finance committee subcommittee is that the appropriations for that, you won't find a exact line for that initial request. You'll find that in the public services provider agency total of the 2,000 that was initially requested. I just want to let you know where that would come from.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I would like to echo what Robin said about the partnership that we had for the grant that we had in common with all the communities around Sebago Lake. That was a great benefit to our town. And I think we were right there with at the top pretty much in terms of participation. We pretty much attended every meeting and got to know the chamber folks in I think in a good way. And so if you look at the value proposition on the chamber membership, at least in this particular year, it was significantly more than the ask. But I was not sure whether Robin was coming, so I kind of put this into the contingency account that the selectmen had given me to utilize to help, various nonprofit provider agencies that, have benefit to the town. So it could be broken out and put in as an individual provider agency if you'd like to do that. But I was a little unsure because I funded it in the prior year from that amount that the Board of Selectmen granted me. But I would tell you, money well spent.
Thank you, Don.
Yes, thank you, Don. And I enjoyed working with you and Kathy a lot. And I, again, appreciate everyone's time.
Don't forget Kayla, she might be watching.
Well, I just thought of that when you said that. I'm like, I can't forget Kayla because I think she may have actually been on more calls than Kathy was. So yeah, so I'm sorry, Kayla.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Marshall.
Yes, sorry, Bob. The Raymond Waterways, that falls outside the $2,000 limit, I'm assuming. It has fallen out in the past. That's a standalone item.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other provider
Yes.
agencies?
I see an RTP, Deb Fritzen.
Hi, that's me. I'm representing RTP. RTP operates the Lakes Region Explorer, which is the big, beautiful white bus that runs up and down the 302 corridor. This year, we were shut down for the months of April and May. You'll see that in the packet of information that I've given you. But we've been providing service consistently to the Lakes Region towns. This year we do have 2 brand new buses that are out on the road. So you'll see them, they're bigger. They're 24 passenger buses. They have accommodations for 2 wheelchairs. They're Wi-Fi equipped. They have bike racks on the front. And despite COVID this year, we did start our service on Saturdays in the summertime. And it's hard to say if it was popular or not, given that it was in a COVID environment, but we're committed to continuing that service moving forward. Some of the COVID safety measures that we've taken are disinfecting the buses regularly during the day, at the end of the day and during the day too. The drivers wipe down the high touch areas during the day. We hand out masks to riders and face shields to riders if they don't have their own masks. We provide social distancing on the bus, which has been a little bit tricky. With the 24 passenger bus, depending upon how many riders we get from the same household, we've been running at about 40% capacity in the bus. And at times we've had to run a chaser bus behind the big Lakes Region Explorer bus so that it would take overflow passengers, sit a safe distance apart from each other. So we literally from time to time have been running 2 buses on the same route at the same time. After we reopened the bus line in June, of the there's no polite way to say it. Cash is quite germy, and people were not handling cash. The drivers had to handle a lot of cash, so we didn't collect cash fares for a long time. And in that time, we renovated our website so that riders can actually purchase Lakes Region tickets and monthly passes on our website. So it's a much more cleaner environment, put it that way. So what else do? We updated the website. So we are asking all 5 of the Lakes Region towns on 302 between Wyndham and Bridgeton. We're asking each town for $8,500 of support. That's the same amount that we've asked in the past. I know not every town can offer that full support. And I just want to thank you for any amount that you can give to us. We're very grateful. We take the money from each of the 5 towns that we ask money from, and we leverage that to get federal dollars to meet the deficit in our budget. The Lakes Region Explorer cost, outside of our COVID world, our budget runs between $150,000 and $160,000 a year. And we ask for $8,500 of support from 5 different towns. So you can see, if you do the math, that's a very small percentage of our annual budget. And like I said, not every town can give $8,500, but we're grateful for anything that you can give. In the past year, when we have become aware of our regular Lakes Region riders that were uncomfortable on the bus, what we did is we shifted some of the riders over to our paratransit service, which is a door-to-door service, so that people would get to where they needed to go and feel comfortable getting there in a safe way. And we plan to continue to do that for all of the residents along the Lakes Region route. In addition to that, we have annually provided free ride tickets and monthly passes at the food pantry. And if there's a demand for that, we're happy to continue to offer that service to Raymond residents as well. Are there any questions that you might have?
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
There are no hands raised.
Well, Deb, I guess you did a good job.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for your presentation.
So we have Paul Cullinan from the Raymond Village Library here, and we have the Walkers. I think they're affiliated as well.
All right.
Hello, good evening. I'm Paul Cullinan. I'm the co-treasurer of the Raymond Village Library. I live on Spiller Hill Road. First thing I'd like to do is thank the Budget Committee and the Select Board for their support in the past few years. We've needed it, and we've thoroughly appreciated it. This year, we're coming forward with a budget that asks again for $66,000, the same amount we received last year. I have to say that this year has been a challenge from all aspects of the library for us to continue providing services, to come up with new ways to deliver those services. But I have to say, I think we've done very well. We couldn't have done it without the town's support. For the coming year, we are looking to continue that outreach into the community, which we would like to extend. We've in the past year, we did some story walks in the Raymond Village Shopping Center and in the community garden that has been proven very successful. And we will be continuing those sorts of activities in the upcoming year. As well, we are discussing with Joe Crocker and Don the possibility of putting in kiosks that at certain places around the town that would have a take one, leave one type of lending library that would be basically stocked with either withdrawals from our community, from our circulation, or from donations we get for our book sale, trying to have a selection of children's books and activities as well as adult titles. Proper adult titles. We were considering, and we hope we might be able to place one at Tasseltop Beach, perhaps at the Fry Island Landing, and maybe tap into some people the summer residents out there who might think of us upon time for continued support. And there are several other things that we have that we are looking that we'll have to spend money on in the upcoming year. We're talking about replacing several windows in the library that are still single pane windows that would help us be more energy efficient. We're talking about potentially installing a standby generator that would allow for continued access in periods when there's a power outage, et cetera, and perhaps even be a warming space for the town if necessary. We have been continuing to discuss internally the possibility of a building expansion with a general purpose, multi-purpose room added. But in the process of doing that, we also have uncovered some potential structural problems that we'll need to address with regard to the existing library. The addition at the back of the library is on a slab that has settled somewhat, and we're starting to try to figure out what the structural issues actually are there and what we would have to do to correct them. So that is pretty much where we are with regard to this. We're asking for the same amount we received from the town last year. We have done very well in our fundraising, so we hope that we'll be able to do some of these additional projects without asking for more resources from the town. We've also put in the budget some money to hire or retain the services of a grant writer to help us try to access more grants from various sources for library and general purpose organizations, foundations, etc.
Thank you, Paul. Does anyone have any questions for Paul?
Joe does.
Paul, has the library been open?
Yes, yes. We're closed for 6 weeks or so completely, and then we got into having people curbside service for people and delivery if they wanted it. We offered that, and then when the guidelines loosened up a bit, we started to let people come into the library. That was limited to 5 patrons at a time, maximum initially. It's now up to 12 patrons at a time. But no, and I'd say our circulation is virtually back where it was before the pandemic, before this time last year when we shut down.
Great, thank you.
Rolf has a hand up, Bob.
Rolf?
Just wondering, you got some PPP money and also some grants.
We did, and that again is a boost to our money. As I say, our fundraising held up extremely well this year, and in fact exceeded our expectations. In addition, we've gotten the forgiveness of the PPP loan, which was $14,000 something.
Right. If it hadn't been for the grant and the PPP, you have an idea where you would have been budget wise, because obviously that helped out quite a bit there. So
that's true. If you took out the PPE and the fact that our fundraising captured, well, we went over 50,000 in what we collected from our annual appeal, and our goal at the time was, where our originally budgeted number was 35,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those are the two things that basically came on. All of our other fundraisers marginally have done better. So I think we would have finished the year without those two other things. I think we would finish this year right about breaking even.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Bob, Teresa has a question.
Paul, I know that they're doing another round of the PPP, and I forgot to ask this Sunday night. Can you do that?
No.
Another round?
No, we can't, because we can't demonstrate a revenue loss.
Okay. I just know that they're offering it again, but I didn't know. Yeah.
And Marshall had his hand up as well.
Go ahead, Marshall.
My turn. Paul,
Yes.
Your 2020 tax return shows a deficit of 7,000, and yet your savings increased by 16,000. I'm not sure the accounting method used to handle those numbers.
Well, at the time, we would have shown, no, that's 19. Let me think. The taxes we were showing are for 2019, right? That's the filing.
No, let me give you the numbers. This is June 30, 2020, line 22. Or I'm sorry, line 18 shows a deficit of 7,000.
Mm-hmm.
And yet your line 22 shows an increase of 16,000. I'm not sure what accounting theory that is there.
Well, first, part of it is that we need to record depreciation, which doesn't actually have a cash flow to it, but it is an expense in that it recognizes the loss of capital value. So that's a part of that, why that doesn't show up as quite in the cash situation. Let's see, this is 19, June. We would also have the PPP loan in there as part of the cash flow that generates that, even though we couldn't show it as income. Because the income from the forgiveness of the loan doesn't show up until this fiscal year.
Well, it shouldn't, right?
But we got the cash, we got the proceeds from the loan back in April of last year. So that's what that boosted the cash flow to show up in this bottom line, and why the numbers don't quite match up the way they should. I mean, the way the assets show up greater than what you'd expect from the income statement.
This is the first time you've shown a deficit in years. Thank you.
I see no other raised hands, Bob.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
Are there any other provider agencies?
No, it doesn't look like it.
All right, thank you. We're gonna move right on to cemeteries.
I believe that's on page 102 of your.
Our pages don't have numbers.
But I don't think you have numbers. If you're looking at it electronically, you could find it.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna rectify that in a subsequent year.
Yeah, I counted that to my learning curve. I do apologize for that.
Right.
Most of the charges stay the same. The software stays the same. I'm still requesting $35 to $100 to restore all stones, the ones that are broken, leaning, fallen down, and eventually clean them. Right now, they're working in not right now, as cold as it is today, but this fiscal year and next fiscal year, they'll be working on fixing the broken and leaning stones in the village cemetery. And as soon as they finish that, I'm going to have them start on North Raymond Road, because that has quite a few stones and things that are broken. But as far as I know, I think Nathan said it was a 3% increase in mowing. Yes. And this is the first year of a new contract, I believe.
Yeah, I think the contract went up 3%. I'm sorry, I was not ready for that. Yeah, so it's 3% up for the first year in mowing.
And Joe has a question, Bob.
Yeah, Joe.
So you mentioned that you're requesting 3,500, but it says 4,300 for repairs and maintenance.
Okay. That piece of paper says 35. Did I mistype it somewhere?
Well, I'm looking at Department 40-1200, Public Services Cemeteries.
I believe Alex lumped together several items in my request.
Yes. Yeah, so in historically, Sue has presented a separate document where it breaks down all the numbers based on, from my understanding, the board's and the finance committee's preference. In terms of how it's listed in the accounting software, you will see that in 40-1200, account number 4010, which is the 4,300, as Joe just mentioned.
Is it 4345, Joe?
It's 4,300.
4,300.
Yeah,
And then
There's
So I-
software for 845.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then there's
and it's
4,300
300
for repairs and maintenance.
and part of the repairs and maintenance is $400 for the American Legion veterans flags, $100 for supplies, and $300 that Dick charges us occasionally for going out and doing work in the cemeteries.
Okay, so it's 3,500 plus another 800
Yes.
on top of that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Sue? Thank you, Sue. We'll move on to Parks and Recreation, Tasseltop.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Crocker. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. The first line I'd like to go over is the salary. We'll be asking for an increase of 20,000. What this position will be is a Parks foreman position that will be split between Public Works and Parks. On the park side of things, we'll be focusing on Sherry Gagnon Memorial Park, Crescent, some of the other parks around the town. Specifically the baseball, softball field. This will allow some grooming, chalk in the field, and some other special projects that I think we need to address in that area. This would also could lead to some revenue streams there as we get the baseball and softball fields. We could have softball rentals and other type of programs using that. Also, this position would be in charge of the playground structures as far as being a certified playground safety instructor. It's a national accreditation through the National Recreation Parks Association. So they'll do routine checks and any maintenance on these structures and new structures that we're putting in. The contract fee, which is line 3,005, that should be actually 17,000.
Yeah, and I could talk to that. That
Go
was
ahead, Alex.
yeah, definitely. So when so you'll notice that on contracts, the prior budget for this current fiscal year was 13,500. So there was actually a request to increase that to 17,000. So this was one of the things that was caught and rectified. And I'll speak to the bottom in total increase to the budget as we get to the bottom number with you all. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So with the contract increase is actually we're just moving a what's in there is a porta potty contract that we for all the parks, and then we're moving a mosquito and tick spray for Sherry Gagnon Park out of Public Works and into the Parks and Rec budget, where I will be in charge of that. I'm also asking for two new additional lines, one being advertising or marketing, the other one being park and maintenance and projects. The advertisement line would be for brochures. If we can get volunteers, gifts, kind of labeled Raymond Parks and Rec, stuff like that. The park and maintenance project line would be kind of for equipment and other resources that we need to take care of the park systems. We also worked with the soccer director, Raymond Rec Association, to help line fields this fall. And one of the things that I think we need to address was they just didn't have the equipment. So to properly line the fields and have them, they were using spray cans and push type of liner, and I'd like to go to a paint type of liner so it would stay longer. So that's what that line would be for. Do you want to move on to Tasseltop?
Sure.
Okay. Tasseltop it runs a little bit differently as an enterprise account, but I did put the expenses and kind of lined up with what we did this year. We definitely had to increase our spending on these items because of the infrastructure. So I adjusted those accordingly to what we did last year in expenses. And then this year, it's kind of different. This revenue goes through the fiscal year, but tallying the season revenues, we did increase at Tasseltop 26% from the last season. So that was really a big success, and I'd like to thank the staff for really being motivated and in a different type of climate this year, the pandemic. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any questions?
Teresa,
Joe.
Joe, Nathan.
Want to go first, Tracy? You want me to go?
Go ahead.
I just want to speak to the part-time position because that person is going to be coming on to Public Works in the wintertime. We're picking up a little bit of plowing on Gore Road and Brown Road, and I'm trying to juggle a little bit on the plow routes. Most of the support on this should be for the summertime. We're falling behind on Mill Street Playground. 10 years ago, we started falling behind. We don't have the time or the expertise to maintain that the way it needs to be maintained. Same with Raymond Beach and Crescent Beach. We go in the spring, do a quick cleanup, and that's it. I think this has been a long time coming. We just haven't had the place for that full-time position in the Public Works until now. And sharing it with Parks and Rec is going to help us and help them, I think.
Yeah, I would like to double up on that. This model has been done in other municipal parks and rec agencies. They'll spend their time in the parks side of things during spring, summer, fall, and then move into winter where obviously the workload changes because of our seasons. So that's what this is modeled after.
Joe?
Thank you. So just so I'm reading this correctly, because they're in two separate areas, but you're asking for a $15,000 increase in salaries at Tasseltop and $20,000 in rec. Is that correct?
So the Tasseltop increase is not funded through taxpayers. It's an enterprise account. We can balance those off of the revenues coming into the park. So it's kind of seen as an increase, but it's actually just kind of adjusted what we spend on salaries.
And Joe, I can speak to that. So Tasseltop right now, we have an initial budget for revenues for Tasseltop at $79,500 and expenses for Tasseltop at $76,393. Essentially, about a $3,000 net gain for that proprietary account, which, like Joe has just mentioned, that it's separate from the tax dollars because it basically funds itself. And you are correct as far as the salaries for the Parks and Rec. It would be the portion for Parks and Rec would be roughly $20,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the answer to the general question, though, is a yes.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's a, it is a difference in funding source, but it's a yes.
Yes.
Teresa has her hand up.
Yeah, Teresa.
Okay, so the 20,000, is that just out of Parks and Rec, or is there going to be money coming out of Public Works for that other part of the salary?
Half of the salary will be coming out of the Public Works budget. 26 weeks, in theory, 26 weeks out of the year he'll be working, or they will be working for Public Works.
And how much is that Public Works salary?
It'll be the same, whatever we end up paying the person. I put in $22,880. I think that's around $21 an hour, somewhere in that range.
Okay, because I'm thinking 20,000 for what they're going to be doing. I thought that was total. All right. The other question is, I have a couple. How are we doing on rentals for this year for Tasseltop? Are we full already on that, Joe?
Yes, I just I've opened up the rental season a little bit longer than what was previously done. So we have, I believe, 15. I just had that up. I believe we have 15 weeks rented this year. And I have gotten 2 requests outside that I'm just waiting to confirm. So we'll be roughly in revenues coming in probably around 20,000. So that should increase this year as well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask the first question because the second one might be longer. I always ask every year 35,000 in I think it's under capital improvement, the CIP account for playground improvements of 35,000. Is that something that should stay in there that you guys can continue to use?
Yes. And Nathan might be able to speak more of it because that was kind of before my time here.
We've got, we still got some more equipment to change out down to Mill Street and some upgrades to Mill Street. So yes, I would encourage that we keep that 35 grand in there for playground improvements.
Okay. So talking about Mill Street. Anybody that's ever done Mill Street down there has always, between baseball or whatever else, has always known that you are very limited on when you can get on those fields. We have constantly, it's a constant swamp back there. So my question would be to Joe, and you don't have to answer tonight, just put this in your brain, is I think something else needs to be done besides that back field with the baseball. I mean, it's just, we put a lot of time in, we put a lot of frustration in, you put dirt in, you put, dryer, whatever it is in there for these people to play back there, and boom, it's a very limited thing. But now what we're also finding, and that's one of the reasons why we did not put up the big playground unit for anybody that's watching these meetings, because we have a small unit down there, but we didn't put the other big unit up there down there, is because it was sink. It's not safe to put a playground unit. So that's why we're looking to put it up at Tassel Top, where it's a lot nicer ground. So something needs to be done with with Mill Street that can be usable, that we don't have to go through this every year. And this is definitely a thorn in everybody's side that's ever been on baseball, that's ever done public works down there, that's done anything down there. So
I can speak for that. Yes, I've been talking with the president of Little League since last February is one of the first outreaches I did. And he talked about Mill Street, and I got to go down during springtime, and he was not over exaggerating on these issues. It's definitely probably from a parks maintenance situation. I don't know how you can remedy that. It's just flat. It pools up. There's clay underneath. So yes, I do have a plan that I can put on paper and kind of put an assessment in. And that's definitely in the works.
okay, cool, because it is definitely a nightmare back there.
Yeah.
And people go down there and hang out and everything else, but I think we need to turn it into something good or something else. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's the season, really. That spring season is just, if we get a long winter, really wet spring, it's just a combination. I do think you could get away with a field during the summer, springtime soccer type of thing, because you have, fall, because you have time for it to dry out long term and get some sun out there and dry it out. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
We've actually had that looked at least a couple of times by the town engineer, and it's very difficult to engineer your way out of a hole.
Yep.
And so it's certainly something we could look at again, but it's a difficult site.
I think something's got to be. The baseball fields are the biggest problem down there. We just can't get on. We can't get on the fields until halfway through the season. Usually when it dries up. The lawn equipment getting stuck out in the backfield trying to mow it.
Yeah.
Joe's got his hand up.
Yeah, Joe.
Thanks. Every time someone says Joe, I don't know whether to answer.
I'm looking at the other Joe.
I'm looking at Tassel Top, and we got cabin repairs for $5,000 requested. Are we going to do that before the season starts so people have a nice cabin to go into, or is this like after they ruin it, we go in and repair it?
No, it's not a post what we didn't we got kind of a late start, and with all the operational changes we had to make going into last season with the pandemic, we didn't get to address the cabins. We kind of addressed every other structure there. So no, we're going to try to get some these projects that we had lined up in place. We did remodel the bathroom, made it a little bit bigger, and put some nicer finishings in there. So no, this will be springtime before the cabin rentals.
So, but you're budgeting this for next year. So you're hoping you have some money already in your budget to do that ahead of time.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Any other questions for Joe?
I see no other hands.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Let's move on to administration.
Okay, thank you very much. Don Willard, Spiller Hill Road. And this is the introduction, so it's a little bit out of sequence, but so I'll keep it kind of quick. The draft budget for FY 21-22 has met, I believe, the Board of Selectmen budget goals that were outlined in their meeting last year. And we have it at a 2.46% increase without any undesignated fund balance in at this point. So all calculations throughout the budget, reflect no fund balance. We've had another great and strong year with respect to property tax growth, valuation growth. We're looking at about $7.5 million. And we always try to estimate that on the conservative side. I should tell you, this has been an unprecedented year, as you all know. It's been very difficult for the staff. So I want to thank the staff members. I want to thank the elected officials of the town. We've all worked together and to try to provide services uninterrupted, and we achieved that, and so far safely, which is a very good thing. And most importantly, I want to thank the citizens. We haven't had any real instances of any kind of problems or difficulties, and so it's been, a good and cooperative relationship between, the appointed elected officials, citizens, in trying to provide services in what are unprecedented times for us, at least. And so I want to thank everybody for that. We're going to continue to try to adjust our protocols moving forward, stay safe, and try to avoid any sort of outbreak in our municipal facilities. We do have, as you probably know, COVID, throughout the town, and it's serious business. And so we're trying to do what we can to be compliant with best health and safety practices. So we have 3 new department heads. And so you're seeing Joe Crocker. So that's the duplicate of Joe. So Joe's not our only Joe anymore. And we have another problem here in the town office. We got 2 Alexes, so we call them old Alex and new Alex, although they're both considerably younger than many of us. So it's a little confusing, but so we have a new finance director, a new code officer, and a new recreation director, and a new recreation department. Not the greatest timing in the world for Joe Crocker to be coming in less than a month before the outbreak of a pandemic. I'd like to say, though, that he's a creative and I think resourceful young man, and he's done a good job to try to come up with programming and resources, and he's made a number of improvements that have been, I think, very meaningful for the town. And I think the most, to me, interesting thing and biggest achievement was coming in with a great season at Tasseltop in a pandemic year. Now, some of that was the idea that people were going to the park, but we also had to social distance the park and reduce its capacity, and we didn't have the length of season that we had previously. So I think a lot of that is due to the management and operations and the budgeting and so forth that he did. And so I give him credit for that. I'm equally enthusiastic about our new code officer, Alex Soroyce, who comes to us from Casco. He's got a number of new and good ideas, which he's going to talk about. And then we have Alex Aponte, who comes to us from the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments about a month or so before he had to start his budget. So I've been working with him closely, and I think he is going to turn out to be, and has turned out already to be, a great addition to our staff. So that's the new staff members. And so, as I said, this was supposed to be the the introduction, but I'll give you the kind of the real quick highlights of the administration budget. So we've got first in salaries, a 2195 decrease, which is due in part to a reduction in salaries and with the change in personnel, most notably from our former finance director to our new finance director. And we have rescue billing is an increase of $800 to reflect our increased collections, and the cost of the service, the contract service, goes with that increase. Registry of Deeds, we have an increase of $1,000 to reflect greater activity, i.e. discharges, transfers, etc. It's a busy time in real estate. Travel and training administration is a reduction of $4,000. This reflects our actual use. This is a pandemic. We aren't traveling like we would normally be. And so that's a savings we can take. Dues and publications, an increase of $400, and that's primarily an increase in the Maine Municipal Association dues. Advertising is a decrease of $100. In talking to Alex today, we possibly could decrease that some more. I guess we've never, I think the number was 4,000, Alex, so we've never gone above. So we could play with that a little bit, but that's pretty minor money. Supplies is an increase of $400 to cover the cost of consumables. We're doing a lot more in-house. We have more printers, more of everything when it comes to technology these days. Elections is a reduction of $624, and I've learned from prior years not to speak on Sue's election, so I let Sue. She can do it now, or she can do it at the end. Which do you like, Sue?
May as well do it now.
All right.
That's primarily because this is what's considered an off year for elections. The only state elections would be referendum. On the whole, they are less expensive. But after last year with the presidential and the number of absentees that were sent out, I did increase the number of absentees for each election because I think people are getting the hang of it more or less and like voting that way. So, but I think that even though this past year was a historic election because of the president, it also, because of COVID, has changed a lot of how people are thinking about how they vote. So we may see different costs in the future, but it made it a little challenging to put that together this year.
Okay. The next area is postage, which is a reduction of $1,000, and that reflects, the continuing decrease in the use of the U.S. Postal Service. Records restoration, which is another Sue line. It's a new line at $3,000.
And that is where there's a company named CoFile in Essex, Vermont, that will take and has taken now 3 of our books. And by books, I'm referring to our vital records, the permanent records that are down cellar in the vault that are births, deaths, and marriages. They've already done the one that started in the late 1800s and went through the beginning of the 1900s, and they have just finished 2 of the books from the end of that until 68, I believe, for births and for marriages. So these are all records that we have to keep permanently. They were fading significantly. They were in bindings that were acidic. And the company wraps the pages in Mylar after putting the paper through a deacidification process. But they also scan them all, and I will end up getting all of the records electronically, so I'll be able to post them online, the ones that are for public viewing, the oldest ones. And we'll have a record electronically as well. So it's a benefit that way for all posterity, and will make Kevin happy too.
Thank you, Sue. So we have the telephone at an increase of $1,500, and that's to reflect the addition of 2 new cell phones for Joe Crocker, Rec Director, and also for Kayla Gonzalez, who does our communications director. And then we picked up 4 flip phones, thinking that in the beginning of the pandemic, before they were no longer available, thinking we may use them. for remote services. We ended up not going remotely, so we had that expense, and that will drop off, and eventually when the contract runs, and we do have the phones in the meantime, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And I guess we have used them a small amount, but that was something that we did. We did a number of things to try to be ready, and we're going to seek, obviously, and have been seeking, and I can talk about that later, FEMA reimbursement. So that may come back to us. So the administration overall reduction is $819, and then I can roll into general government if you'd like. And so the compensation training, that's the merit pool. We did an update with KMA of Falmouth, and so that's a private sector firm that does this sort of wage analysis work. Don Tyler, you may recall, had done the original study back in 2016. So this is the first update. It's not saying that, and the difference there is $38,027 from last year's appropriation. Not saying we're going to utilize that amount of money, but subject to merit reviews, subject to appropriate adjustments, some of that money, may be used, will be used. And so this is the first update of that study. Travel and training. Once again, this is the general account for travel and training, is a $4,000 reduction. And so overall, we're looking at for general government compensation training, an overall increase of $34,027.
Any questions?
I see no raised hands.
All right, let's go on to the assessors then. Assessing.
Yep, good evening, everybody. My name's Kurt LaBelle. I'm the contract assessor for the town of Raymond. There's the assessor's budget is typically stable every year. This year, there's a couple of changes, one that's fairly minor and another one that's quite significant. The minor change to the assessor's budget relates to some increased software maintenance and web hosting costs from our appraisal system vendor. That's a software line. And the biggest change is the addition of a revaluation fund line into the assessor's budget. And what happened a couple of years ago, I had requested that the town begin to appropriate some funds annually for a revaluation project fund for future incoming reval. We've been seeing quite a bit of appreciation in the marketplace, and we're going to probably need to look at initiating a reval here in the very near future. Became aware in late fall in discussions with the outgoing finance administrator that the town had been appropriating $100,000 for the last 2 years, but it had been doing so through its TIF fund. And the problem with that is revaluation is not an allowable expense out of the TIF fund. That needs to be used for economic development purposes only. So for this year's budget, we're taking the $100,000 allotment out of the TIF fund and into the general fund. I believe that there are some general fund expenditures that do qualify as TIF expenditures that will be rerouted so that we don't upset the overall continuity of the budget. But we will have a couple $100,000 of TIF reserve money kind of lingering out there for a future TIF project that I think over the next year or so, we'll be probably continuing to look for general fund expenditures that qualify under the TIF that we can swap some of those funds around and hopefully catch back up on our revaluation project fund. I know that was pretty quick. Anybody have any questions about that or TIF funding or in general?
I have a question. What's the estimated cost on a reval? I mean, how many years that we're gonna have to save?
I would estimate it's going to be in the vicinity of $300,000 to $350,000. I believe the last revaluation that we had in 2005 was around 260,000, in that vicinity. I'm expecting prices have probably increased since then. So I'm thinking in the $300,000 range is going to pretty well get us there.
Mr.
Thank you.
Bruno has questions.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Thank you. So Kurt, are you saying that the money that was put into the TIF fund for reval cannot be used?
It cannot be used for the reval because it's not it's not a statutorily approved expense for TIF districts. So we will need to hold that money and wait and use it for a TIF project in the future.
So that money cannot be transferred to a reval account?
We could do that, but the problem is when you transfer it into the general fund, you then have to report that to the state, and you're going to lose your shelter on your state valuation. You're going to have increased costs on the education and the rev share inside. So you're going to pay a price if you move that money to general.
Okay, thank you.
So how much is in there that we had put in there already for the reval?
$200,000 is in the TIF fund right now for the reval. And I believe in talking to Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to kind of hold that in the TIF fund for a future project. We do have some things coming up related to the district that we may be able to use that funding for in the upcoming years.
That is the intention. I mean, the intention, Joe, is to not go off track. The intention is to make the accounting adjustments that we need to make by finding TIF eligible projects to charge against, to shift TIF eligible projects from the general fund budget to the TIF budget, and then the TIF monies to the reval.
Is this something new? I mean, I guess I'm kind of wondering, we've got 200,000 in there. How do we all miss this? Is it a new law, or is it?
No, it's not a new law. It's an error. I don't know how we missed it. I mean, I don't know if Alex can shed any light on that, but
yeah. So TIF is one of those accounting creatures that isn't really really talked about much, and very, very few people know the ins and outs. I could totally see this as, unless you read that 1990 document, that I think that's the correct year, right, Kurt? 1990, when we did the original.
Well, in late 90s, probably 1998, 99 is when the town's development program for the district was approved. So the town is constrained both by its own development program and by TIF statutes.
Right.
I think, yeah, certainly if I were aware that was how we were corralling our funding, I would have made mention of that early on. Unfortunately,
Right.
I did not know until this fall that that's how we were deriving that funding.
Well, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying, because I know we all are like question things that go in the TIF, what can go, but all of a sudden, all of us didn't catch that. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so as I was doing an audit, just coming into the new position, I noticed that, I started questioning TIF and questioning this reevaluation, then started talking with Kurt and noted, and, when I shared with him that reevaluation line was listed under TIF, and he stated that that's definitely not, I think, and we consulted with our lawyers, and it's definitely not something that a reevaluation that's, it's not TIF eligible. Okay. So what we can do, I did talk to Shauna. She's definitely the one that can handle this creature because she knows TIF inside and out. So she was able to just essentially say to me, as long as it stays within the TIF, bucket, then we're not losing the money. We just have to make sure that whatever we use it for has to
Reallocating
be
for some.
right, exactly. And the thought and conversation with Dawn and Kurt is, is it the possibility to look at general funds that are not being utilized? And obviously we would have to talk to the board and reallocating some possible funds to try to do some catch up, as Kurt mentioned.
And I think that's going to be relatively easy to do, to get some things out of the general fund budget that are TIF qualified, and then utilize the funds in the, for the reval.
Okay, thanks.
Marshall had a question, I believe.
I had the same question. Thank you.
Oh, and Nathan has his hand up.
Can't we take the paving money that we're matching the grant for the
Yes.
project
Yes,
and just swap it?
yes. That's one of them we're doing,
That
yes.
was short and sweet, Dawn. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Mr.
At
Bruno
least
has a
at least
question.
a portion of the project that's inside the district, for sure. You may have to do some proration there. But one of the things that the town may want to do over the next few years is 8 more years in this district term. And I'm anticipating that the district is going to produce about $2 million in revenue over the next 8 years of its life. And it may well be worthwhile to look at the development program to see if it requires some amendment or some bringing some new projects in that money can be utilized towards. And then, if it were to come to pass that the town just doesn't have the projects for the $2 million that's going to come in, then, the town could always start to phase down its capture as the TIF nears its term and transfer that money to general fund. That's an option too, but that's something that we could look for in the next year or two as we proceed.
Mr. Bruno has a question.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines as Nathan. Why can't we use it for road improvement? But one of the other, where are we as a percentage of the state valuation right now?
I would estimate that coming into this year's tax season, we are probably in the low to mid 70% of market value range. State had us at 84% in 2019. They haven't completed their 2020 study yet, but I'm guessing they're going to put us in around 80. And I believe things have really heated up over the fall of 2020. So I'm thinking we're going to come into this spring, we're already down into the low to mid 70 range. So it's really going to be a question of, do things continue at this pace, or do we start to see a cool off period?
But it means we're going to have to do a reval pretty soon, because we're going to drop below that 70% level pretty soon.
Well, we are going to drop below that 70% level. Of course, there's no real there's no real penalty to be served. Most towns, by the time they actually get to implementation date, they're down into that 50% range, because it does take 2 to 3 years to get the project up and implemented. So, if we start now and we begin the process, by the time we implement this reval, we could be 2023, 2024. By then, our old system, if things continue, we'll be down around 50%, 55%, unless we have a cool down.
I see no other hands.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. We'll move on to code enforcement now.
Hey there. My name is Alex. I'm the code officer for the town, for those who have never met me. I think I know most of you in here, though. So when I started in Raymond in July, I took a couple of weeks to just kind of study how the department was being run. and then created a punch list of things I wanted to accomplish in order to improve the overall customer experience within the department. And the two complaints that I think we hear repeatedly are probably known to everyone in this meeting. And that's, the first one is I can't get a hold of anyone or get a call back. And the second is permit turnaround is too slow. Those have been the two complaints that have been going on for years. And so the primary focus now, on top of reorganizing the department and its processes internally, has been to improve the communication, accessibility, and response time, and also try to speed up the permit processing time. So a big part of that is taking advantage of the technology we have available to us. Using the website to process permits. We've already implemented an online reservation page, which allows people to schedule inspections, office meetings, return phone calls right through the website, which has been a big help and has definitely reduced the amount of incoming calls we get. So I guess to kind of go over some of the changes or requests, the first big one is the salary line. So you'll see that increase. What I'd like to do is hire an additional part-time employee to assist the planning board and the ZBA. So currently, my assistant Mary is part-time. She's my assistant. She's also the secretary for the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. And unfortunately, the workload is just too much for her to kind of get it all done. And so I think by taking the planning board and ZBA tasks away from her, she'd be able to basically get all of the code enforcement specific tasks done, which would be phone calls, scheduling, permit processing, accepting payments, stuff like that. While she's focused on code enforcement stuff, she's really unable to give the two boards the attention they need, which my concern is down the road that could cause some serious issues. For example, minutes not being able to be completed and archived. Things like that really need someone who can be specifically focused on just those tasks every day and not have someone coming in every few minutes, the phone ringing every few minutes. It's just a lot for one person to handle. So I think splitting those two between two part-timers will definitely increase the efficiency for both of those people and can allow them to dial in. The next one is actually I'm going to skip to software. So for a little over 5 years, the code office has had a database program, which mainly is to track permits and inspections, but the software ran incredibly slow. And after a week or two of just trying to, struggling to log into it, I stopped using it because it was just taking way too long. Just to log in took 2 minutes. And every function you did would take a minute for it to catch up to you. It also lacked basically all of the features we need for processing permits on the website specifically. And it was basically just a database software. So we ended up canceling that. That was $5,000 a year the town's been spending on something that was probably only worth $500 or less every year. So that got cut real quick. We found a replacement, which would only cost $1,000 more a year than what we had, and the functions are, they greatly outweigh what we had. We'd be able to, have an online portal for people to apply for permits online, pay for permits online. And when they apply for a permit online, it automatically would enter it right into the database on the back end. So now Mary would no longer have to take these permits and physically enter everything into the database. It would be already done. So that'll take a significant amount of time away from what she has to do there as well. So the real nice thing about that is having people be able to do all of that through the website, and it'll definitely decrease the amount of time we need to process a permit. Plus, people now won't have to print it out off the website, fill it in, scan it, email it back to us, and then we have to print it out and enter everything in. So it'll just streamline things a little bit more. So looking at the number, I just said it's only $1,000 more, and there's obviously quite a bit more requested. That is for some ordinance work that I'd like to have done. So the heart of code enforcement is the ordinances, and unfortunately, the documents are not being updated currently. Long story short, there was an employee who was kind of handling all of the ordinance work that left. And since then, it's kind of been one of those projects that has been tackled when there's time. And right now there is no time. So the ordinances are not being updated. And to update an ordinance is very time consuming, tedious, and one small error can actually cost the town a lot of money. And the longer the ordinances go without being updated, the less enforceable they become. So one of the things that we did in Casco, which was very helpful, was we did a codification project. So you hire an outside company to basically take all of your documents. They put it all together. They reformat everything. They update it. They clean it up, and they send it back to you. And so obviously the first year, the cost for that is a little bit higher because they're actually taking the documents and putting it into their format and getting it back to you. But every year after that, the price is actually, it's much lower because they're only sending the updates to be done. So that's where that additional amount of money is for. There's also in the contracts line, the $3,800 would be an analysis by that company after they've codified the ordinances. What they would do at that point, once they've said, okay, we've taken all of your information, we put it in this new format, we've cleaned it up for you, they would look at it and do a legal analysis. So they'd be looking for errors, redundancies, statute, references that need to be updated, or they'll give you suggestions on ways that the ordinance itself could be improved. So just because our ordinances have been kind of piecemeal updated over the years, we thought it might be a good idea to do a one-time run through on at least the land use ordinance and the shoreline zoning provisions, to make sure that stuff hasn't been missed or errors aren't sitting out there that we aren't aware of. The other stuff's pretty small, so I think that's pretty much all I got.
Thank you, Alex. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Any questions for Alex? Joe?
Weren't we using Sebago Technics to do a lot of the ordnance stuff?
Yeah, we do use Sebago. So Sebago, we have a contract with them, and we pay the planner. I don't know what his hourly rate is. I think it's 96 an hour. They are in a position where, and I did talk with them about this before we went and started the process to get a quote from General Code. They are basically in a position where they don't have the staff to do a project like this, which would be taking the entire ordinance and cleaning it up and updating it every year. They could, but they said it would be very expensive to do.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Some towns use law firms, which is even more so. So this is kind of the way, if you look at the client list on this particular software, you can see that there's a broad spectrum of communities from larger to quite small. And certainly in a lot of communities that we know and have talked with about it. So, I guess it's an evolutionary sort of thing, but the idea of trying to keep it up in-house with, part-time attention has been problematic. We've been, despite the pandemic, in a situation of being extremely inundated with business and requests, permits and whatnot, and a lot of staff changes. We, as Alex said, we had someone who was able to do that and did it. And, that's not the case. And so some of what, I guess I'll take responsibility for this, some of what has been uncovered is stuff that, I was not aware of. And so now I'm in agreement with Alex. We need to get a system that can fix it and move forward and keep us updated. And, we need to make sure that we're providing good services, good timely services and accurate information, and to have things in a searchable database and to be able to do online permitting and all these different things. And having the code in order, these are all things that, we need to do.
I see no other hands.
All right, thank you, Alex.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yep. Town buildings. Don, is that you?
Nate,
No,
I can.
Huh?
Oh no, go ahead.
no, I guess that's me.
I mean, I can talk if you need me to. I have the figures in front of me.
Yeah, I've got them. I think I've got all the town building stuff right here, Alex.
Okay, perfect, awesome.
Nothing's changed and it's all the same, going right down through. We took $300 out of contracts. That's about it. That all stayed the same.
Any questions?
I see no, Mr. Bruno has a question, and Mr. Olson.
So you didn't spend anything on building maintenance this year?
I took money on when I was paying the bills on some of the maintenance we did, I took it out of the CIP account. That's just an accounting whoops on my end. The $5,000 for the 4,000 for buildings is general maintenance of that building, the cleaning of the furnace, small stuff. And it was a mistake on my end. I coded them wrong to the code to Alex, and we haven't straightened it out yet.
Unbelievable, Nathan. You coded something wrong. What is wrong with you?
You're lucky I coded it.
Well, one thing I would like to say about the buildings is that, as you know, we don't have, in the case of the town office, the newest building, but there's been a lot of effort put into, the building systems. And I think Alex is going to get to this, when we talk about, maybe this is the time to talk about the.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I do. I wanted to mention there was a decrease in our heating costs, and that is largely due to the heat pumps.
Yeah.
So that's why we budgeted less for this upcoming fiscal year.
I think we saw a decrease in the electrical, getting rid of all the window air conditioners last year, and those heat pumps have been working pretty good on that. The other thing that's been, I hate to be the one to bring it up, but we really need to start talking and looking and thinking about a new building. We've outgrown the town office. There's problems coming up with that building that are going to be problematic. It's a very old building. We've been trying to figure out an air exchange system to help with the COVID-19 stuff that was going on, and that got very expensive very quick, and we didn't do it yet. But I do think it's something we need to start looking at. It's nothing that anybody really wants to hear, but it's a fact.
My point was just that we have made the most of a really old building and tried to make it as habitable and useful as we can. But I don't disagree with what Nathan's saying in terms of space. We're tight.
I think we've put a lot of money into that building, but I don't think it's lost money. Everything that we've done has been high quality stuff. All it's done is add to the value of that building. I don't think it's lost money, but we found when COVID-19 hit, trying to separate people out and keep people safe, when you got shared offices, and it's pretty tough.
And of course, we'll get to this when we get to insurance, and this is a good news, bad news story, but a lot of the money that was put into the renovations came from depending on how you look at it, the unfortunate or fortunate collapse of the tower during the fall windstorm. And so we were looking at a $20,000 or $30,000 liability if we were kind of willing to spin the wheel and have somebody who didn't perhaps have even the proper insurance that it was necessary to take it down. But then Mother Nature took it down, and it became a nearly $100,000, payout, and we didn't need to put the tower back up because we had other towers by that point. And so a lot of the money that went in the building came from the tower collapse.
The other building that isn't mentioned in any of this very often is our technology building. That's sitting on concrete blocks up there, and it was a portable classroom that's been modified a couple of times, and that's getting pretty tired.
I think Chair Olson had some questions too.
Yeah, I'm assuming that, I mean, I know that a lot of the things that we did in the building this year, COVID related, we captured and we brought that out to a separate sub account. So
Yes.
for to be able to capture that. But when it's all said and done, are we going to have to retrench some of that stuff? And, you know, essentially you've kept the numbers the same, but you know, you're going to have to do some rework once we get clear of that. And is that sufficient in there?
Everything that we did to accommodate for the COVID-19 is temporary stuff. The plexiglass guards that we put up, that all comes down. It's just a little touch up in paint to make that go away. We're pretty careful and paid attention to that, so we didn't damage anything that would be expensive to reverse.
We have a couple of FEMA submissions, one that's in pending payment, another one that's going in. There could be some changes coming. There probably will be changes coming from the Biden administration with respect to what's qualified for reimbursement. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to recover a large part of what we did have to expend on the building, on what we needed to be ready to address safety in the pandemic. So Bruce Tupper, Chief Tupper, and Deputy Chief Kathy Goslin are working on that and have been making submittals. And so we're continuing to seek whatever reimbursements we can get. So there'll be that funding coming back to us, hopefully.
Yeah, probably 2 years down the road.
Well, no, Bruce says the first submittal should be paid fairly shortly, but I mean, there's all deliberate municipal speed and then there's federal speed. So you tell me.
I see no other raised hands, Bob.
I'm gonna move on then. County tax.
Well, I got an email from the county manager that he was mailing it, but we haven't got it yet. So I think it's probably coming from via Pony Express. That was last week, but it'll be here eventually, I guess. So I don't know what we're going to see, but he's put out the assessment, I guess. You haven't seen it, right, Alex?
No, I believe it's I want to say there was an envelope, and well, actually there was a few envelopes in my folder in my mailbox. So, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. But it did say, I think it did come from the county manager's office. So I should, if it is, I will convey that to you tomorrow.
Right. We can scan and send it out.
Okay.
Do you want me to go see if it's there?
I mean, if everybody.
No, it's only bad news.
It isn't going to be a decrease, though.
This is Rolf's favorite
Right.
area.
And I do note that no one from the county is there to defend their budget.
See? Rolf wants that opportunity so bad.
Do you want to move forward into insurance while she's looking at that?
Sure, please.
So I think Alex is going to take that one.
Yeah, so I was going to speak to the health dental insurance, HRA. So again, a lot of those figures are based, because the way our budget is and our fiscal year, and the fact that most of the all the health insurance is based on a calendar year. There was a slight increase, and some of that has to do with estimating the HRA contribution that we give to the employee. However, statistically, we usually have people only utilize about 54 to 55% of the amount that we provide to them. So it is on the high side, but not too much of a drastic change.
Glasses.
Don, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Are we done? Not sure if Sue.
I'm not as familiar with all of this. Don, do you want me to bring it to you, or do you want me to read what the warrant says?
You can read the warrant.
Okay, it says pursuant to the provisions of Title 30A, et cetera, an estimate of sums necessary for defraying the charges of the County of Cumberland for the fiscal year 2021 was voted December 14, 2020 by the Board of County Commissioners. A tax of $34,065,186 is to be assessed, collected, and paid according to law and applied for the purposes aforesaid. Whereas upon a due apportionment of the said sum on the town cities in said county, your town city's proportion is found to be $773,657 on a valuation of $1.2 million or billion.
You guys are the one that told her to go get it.
Right. So
Base tax went down though.
Yeah, it's down.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, it looks like it's down.
Well,
but
that would
they haven't caught up with our valuation increase yet, and that's why. So it's the same situation we ran into last year, in which the county budget went up, but because other towns' valuation has increased more rapidly than ours, our share has actually gone down a little bit, but it's still not addressing the core issue of the county tax is out of control.
No.
And I might also chime in that one of the things you may notice is that the county tax, much like the SAD tax, is warranted directly to the assessors. So there's little that can be done by the town legislative body to alter that. It's a pass-through assessment.
Yeah, we know that, right?
I see no hands, Bob.
Excellent. Are we done with insurance?
I think the other thing, Don, did you want to tackle the workers' comp and public official liability, auto physical,
Well,
property, or
property casualty, elected officials, with the tower, with some motor vehicle issues, we've had our loss ratios are not the greatest. And so, I guess the bad news is that we're going to see an increase in those areas. And in talking to Rolf, I guess, we have insurance, and insurance has paid out, significantly on a number of claims. And so from a value proposition, obviously we're not the insurance company's favorite customer. we're going to pay for that. But I guess the long range good news is that this is a sort of an unprecedented trend for us, and we'll hopefully return to where we were. But we've had some large claims.
Let's move on to TIF.
You want to do that one, Alex?
Yeah, I could talk to.
There's one big thing there, really.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, there's no major changes with TIF. I think the major change is that we did not put in the 100,000 for revaluation because it's not TIF qualified. So I will be sending out tomorrow the what we have available for for TIF spending. The available TIF funds. And so, but essentially, most of the department heads have requested similar amounts. And so there wasn't really a huge difference. We do have to start thinking about some projects, so. And that's it for TIF.
Any questions for TIF?
Mr. Bruno has one.
Yeah, Joe.
You have 60,000 in there for paving and roads. You still don't think you can use that couple of 100,000?
That would be, where is Nathan?
Nathan.
Your 9035 account under the TIF is for paving and roads. You have 60,000 in there.
That was something Kathy did. I I only look at the number that I have in CIP and I add that 60 into it. That's what I use. I don't know what that was, what they did or how that became, if you're asking that question.
Well, we moved that in there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we maintained, because we kind of spread some of that paving over a couple of different accounts. And at that point, we had some headroom in TIF, so we moved some of it into there. And so it stayed there. So that, I mean, that's an area that could be, that can be looked at as far as to do that, to kind of do some of that rebalancing on that 100,000 in moving some of that there, some of the paving in there to offset the reval accrual.
Is the sidewalk project all in the TIF district? I think it is, isn't it?
So the paving was this. So based on my conversation, Nathan, if I recollect correctly, 50,000 was going to come out of CIP, and then you wanted the 60,000 from for TIF, right? That was my understanding, and we were going to leave it there.
Yeah, I guess I didn't understand that. I need whatever we had budgeted, which is 370. I think it is 375 for paving altogether, which pull in the TIF.
Right.
I have in CIP.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about the money that's in there for the reval, if we swap it, I mean, it doesn't matter to me where the money comes from as long as we have it. But my question was, I think the whole sidewalk project on the Main Street project that we're doing this summer is in that TIF district.
Yeah, yes, and that's that's the project that I have my eye on to,
just take
use
200,000 and put it into the reval, and take the 200,000 out of TIF or take
right, just move it,
and put it into the reval, and then just swap it into the TIF for the paving.
I don't believe Main Street is not in the TIF district.
It's not in it.
Yeah, I think it is. Isn't it the water line and the Route
Yes.
302 project?
Yeah.
It's not the water line, it's the natural gas line.
No, the water line comes right up Main Street.
The pipeline itself is in the district.
The gas pipeline or the water pipeline?
But the Portland Water District pipeline that ran down Main Street was part of the TIF, wasn't it?
Correct. I think it was, wasn't it?
What put the water line in was a community development block grant and a bond by the town. So I'm not positive about that, but this predates me. But the TIF was the Portland Pipeline District, and that also must go through there somehow. I don't know the precise line of that. Do you, Kurt?
Yeah, the natural gas and the oil pipeline themselves are included in the TIF, but the parcels that around it are not part of the TIF. The area on 302 from the Wyndham line that runs just about to Webb's Mill to 85. That corridor is the 302 corridor. That's definitely in the TIF. And then you have the pipelines themselves and some isolated properties like the dielectric property and the pump station that's up almost into to Casco. So it's a fairly small district, which is probably one of the reasons why we kind of struggle to find projects to do.
So I think we've got to take a look at the allowable activities against the budget and be as aggressive as we can to make the corrective action so we can stay on track for the reval. And that's what I intend to do. And I thought we could get some out for the sidewalk. That was one of my immediate ideas, like Joe and Nathan. So I want to take a look at that in real detail,
Yeah, I'm getting old, but I kind of remember that Portland Water District pipeline.
Could be.
Was part of the TIF.
We can take another look at that. Could well be.
Lost Alex. Oh, there he is.
I'm here. Sorry, I was letting my cat out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do have the document that Kurt gave me. So I'll do some research and read into that and see, does it qualify? And is it part of the region?
I mean, we can also look at the, the ramifications of what sort of penalties we might face too. I mean, it depends on how serious we are. I mean, it's not something that is without a solution. But I like the solution of just an exchange first.
So I think that was the only other major thing. There was originally I thought this was TIF, but it's actually capital improvements. There was a line that my predecessor had labeled land improvements, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. And we had 10,000 that was allocated actually this current fiscal year, and I went ahead and added it to the budget, another additional 10,000. And in talking with Nathan and Dawn, realized that we do not need that $10,000 in the budget for FY22. So in the capital improvement line, I will send a brief update with everything or any changes. But that was the only other major change that I wanted to point out, was that under Department 91-1501, account number 9070, should be 0.
And that was for cemetery work, Nate?
Yeah, that was for the Raymond Hill Cemetery improvement.
And you're done?
That project's done. This year, we're gonna do the fence on North Raymond Road. That's kind of falling apart, so that'll suck up quite a bit of that, probably most of it.
I was just talking about that the other day. We had promised that to the Edwards sisters. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was a while ago.
Man, it's been 5 years, 6 years.
Anyway.
They've been gone longer than that.
Been longer than that, has it? Been 10? It's been a while. It's been on my to-do list for quite a while.
I have a feeling that they know we haven't got it yet.
I'm sure they do.
Any other TIF questions?
I see no other hands raised.
Marshall
is waving.
Marshall.
We'll stay with the cemetery for a second. I wondered if you would consider putting granite curbing instead of the fence back there, for 2 reasons. One, you wouldn't have to replace that fence every so often. And number 2, I don't think any other cemetery in Raymond has a fence, do they?
I didn't know if I had the ability to make that decision to tear that fence out.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
We should look at it. It's something we should look at, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be better if you had. I think there's 4 gates on that cemetery. If you had curbing enough to stop cars rolling in there, but enough for us to get in. I think
The other thing you could look at, I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad idea. That could be a good idea, but granite curbing is very expensive. The other thing,
some kind of curbing.
Well, the other thing that you could look at would be, I don't know if you're familiar, say, with the fencing at the salmon set, for instance. They have composite fencing, and I've seen it. I think if there's a farm over in Falmouth, Big Horse Farm, that has it, that stuff lasts forever too.
It does.
We were going to use composite material on that. Right now, there's a granite post behind the posts, so those would have to come out and do something with that. But yeah, there's a couple of options there we could look at. I don't want to be the one to make the
I
decision.
don't think you want to put a wood fence back there at all.
No. Oh no.
The other thing is you'd go all the way across the cemetery and then the daily annex also.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I have reservations up there.
They're all highlighted in yellow.
Yes.
On the map.
Or mine.
Let's move on to revenues.
Well, the general idea there, Alex, is basically looking at the past year's receipts and trying to project as best you can for the, trends and changes you might see, and you get, semi-solid estimates in some areas, and there's no contribution in there of fund balance, so that's something that'll be determined later. But basically, you take a look at what your receipts have been and try to look in your crystal ball and figure out where things are going. I think we've been pretty strong on automobiles. That's been pretty certain. Joe, you must be ready for a new car.
Don, I'm downsized.
Oh.
I'm getting cheap in my old age as I approach retirement.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I can say every time a stimulus check goes out, our office gets very busy with new cars.
Thanks to Joe.
Where are we on tax collections? You know, are we behind or on target?
Yeah, we're
Sue's-
actually. Oh,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say Sue's really good with that.
yeah, she definitely is good. She's definitely a go-getter. She's actually, last time I connected with her, we were ahead of what we're supposed to be. We find that some folks pay their taxes ahead of the game, which, I don't mind. Helps with the cash flow. But essentially, I want to say that the original commitment was 14,000. 14 million, and when I connected with her, we were at 6 million. So a million over the half point mark.
Things generally speaking for the town, economically at least, have been, not adversely affected by the pandemic, if that's the question. And you would expect there would be, an effect, but we haven't really seen it in that way.
Yeah, and we started getting a lot of
we are helping people who obviously are in need. We have resources between general assistance and community assistance. And the food pantries, they're all very, active entities, but generally speaking, if you look at in total, things are relatively, or actually more than relatively good.
Yeah, we definitely haven't had a collections issue, which is good. I've noticed that even with the bills not having gone out yet, we are starting to get some online payments, which is always helpful.
I see no hands raised, Bob.
All right. Public comment?
I don't think we have any public left.
Budget Finance Committee comment? Select Board comment?
Kevin was gonna come tonight. He got tied up with something. He texted me. He was gonna come on an hour later. I told him to watch the video so we can get caught up on everything.
All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
Mr. Jones seconded. Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear him.
Yeah, he's muted.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good night.